Here we go. Wednesday, March 27th. Wow, man. It was just last week, Tom? Just last week. We're talking about St. Patrick's Day and getting
Yeah,
ready for, corned beef, Guinness, all those sorts of things. Now we're shifting from St. Patrick's Day, Easter, dude. Easter Sunday, right around the
yeah.
corner.
It came early too. It's like in March. It doesn't happen that often, but yeah, here we are in March and it's Easter. Where does the time go, man?
Well, and we're moving along, right? Us in Broncos country. The draft is coming up right around the corner here in April. We've
Yep.
got new free agents coming to Denver. We're going to talk about that today and more. But you're literally moving, Tom. The rest of us are moving along. You are actually moving. A big day
Yep.
for you tomorrow. Thoughts and
Yep.
prayers for you and your family, man. But
Thank you.
let's say what's up to everybody. It's Wednesday night. He's Thomas Hall. I am Luke Patterson. We appreciate everybody for joining us here on MHI, where you can rock with us every Wednesday night, 6 p.m. Mountain. And C. Chang, very first one in here. I love seeing our friends come in before the show even starts with a go Broncos. I'm excited every time the Broncos sign a new player. And of course, C is referencing the Broncos' newest wide receiver, former Lion, former Tennessee Titan, now a Denver Bronco. We'll get into that and more. Our very own DVA in the house saying, what up, Broncos country? Make sure you hit that like button on the way in. Please share on all platforms and subscribe if you have not done so already. Our guy Rip was in here earlier. I saw him in the chat. Hashtag Buckham, getting geared up, getting ready to go. DTR, another tool for our quarterback of the future. Here's the thing, Tom, right when we think the Broncos, they're not going to do anything, right? If they're going to do something, they're going to get Ryan Tannehill, right? We're expecting him maybe on a $5 million deal. We've been speculating maybe they're going to add another journeyman quarterback. Wrong. They went wide receiver today, and they signed former Lions wide receiver Josh Reynolds to a 2-year deal worth up to $14 million as first reported by Adam Schefter. Tom, what was your gut reaction when you found out the Broncos added Josh Reynolds?
Well, I mean, they need a little bit of depth there, right? Because they traded Jerry Jeudy. Tim Patrick's still, uncertain on. I know his knee, his injuries have healed, but it's the last 2 years he has not been available. So they needed to make a move to have somebody in the fold in order to fill out that wide receiver core. So I mean, I'm kind of glad that they did. Does it mean that there's going to be big changes for Cortland Sutton or something like that? I doubt. I mean, he's a nice depth piece. Maybe, but I mean, if he was a younger player, maybe. I mean, I would think he and Cortland Sutton are like 6 months apart, I think, in age, right? So Sutton's a little bit better player when you look at stats wise and things like that. So yeah, I mean, I think they can coexist. But if he was 26 and they went out and got him, then you could think, okay, they're getting younger. Maybe they are going to move on from Cortland Sutton.
Yeah, he's 29, right? So he is, I know, not a big difference when you think about it, right? What's the difference between 29 and 26? 3 years, dummy. Yeah, 3 years, a lot of tread on the miles in the NFL, especially at a position where you're getting jammed, right? You're getting lit up. Not so much in 2024 with the hip drop tackle. I want to hear your reaction in the rest of Broncos country, as well as the special teams rule, owners meetings. What are the Broncos going to do in the draft? I gotta go with my guy William here because I wanna try to advocate for Broncos country as best I can. I knew who Josh Reynolds was, but he is not a household name. I feel like you were very polite, Tom, in saying that he added depth, while the rest of Broncos country is wondering who the hell is this guy. I wouldn't describe him as a jag because he can be a productive player. He's 6'3", 194 pounds. He was drafted by the Los Angeles Rams in the 4th round in 2017. Texas A&M, if I'm not mistaken. He spent 1 year with the Tennessee Titans, didn't do a lot there, but he's been with the Detroit Lions the last 3 years, right? He's been a part of this turnaround for Jared Goff, right? When everybody wrote Jared Goff off and the Detroit Lions, Dan Campbell came in and said, give me all the rejects. I'm going to do something. I'm going to make chicken salad out of you know what. 3 years with the Detroit Lions. He's had an okay career, right? In 2023, he played in 17 games, 40 receptions, 608 yards, and 5 touchdowns. That's 3 more touchdowns and a lot more production than a Jerry Jeudy. I can certainly understand why this would just be a lukewarm signing for the Denver Broncos, and how fans would, this doesn't really move the needle, right? When you look at the room, it's a Cortland Sutton, Marvin Mims, Tim Patrick, Brandon Johnson, Phil Dorsett, Lil Jordan Humphrey, and now Josh Reynolds.
Well, the one thing that is nice, I mean, you coming from the Lions, you've got those players played hard for their coach, right? So, I mean, you're bringing somebody in that wants to go out there and play hard, and he's not worried, hopefully not worried about his off-season video shoots and things like that. I mean, hopefully he's coming in to play with the right attitude, and that's important to when you're building a new culture and trying to turn this thing around from a bunch of losing. It's good to bring someone in that had experienced the turnaround, right? And was part of a team where the culture was changed. And I mean, they almost made it to the Super Bowl. So, I mean, that was quite a turnaround by Dan Campbell. So
I have goosebumps as you say that, because you're right. He was part of the turnaround. Was he the catalyst? No. Are the Lions going to miss him? I think they will in a way. I think he was probably a good role player. I think he was a rock in Detroit, and he hasn't been a rock in his career. I mean, he had 4 years with the Rams, didn't do a lot, had a dud of a season with the Tennessee Titans. I don't know if it was injury related or what went on there, but look, I think this is a good signing for the Denver Broncos. It's effectively a Jerry Jeudy replacement and a better player. I think this is a guy. I haven't followed him on X yet, Tom. I don't know if he pops off with cryptic tweets like Jerry Jeudy or anything like that. So don't hold me to it. But I like what you said. He was part of the turnaround. It makes me think, as you were explaining that, Dan Campbell, the Detroit Lions, you don't think Sean Payton did his homework on Josh Reynolds a little bit? You don't think he made a couple of phone calls to his good buddy Dan Campbell, who knew they couldn't retain Josh Reynolds? I mean, I think Sean identified a guy that he really likes. I'm happy it's not Michael Thomas.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That Michael Thomas was great when he was, in his prime, and he's past it. But look, I mean, the thing of it is about Josh Reynolds isn't this dynamic receiver. He's not going to wow anybody. He's not. He doesn't, pop off of the stats page when it comes to yards or even yards per reception or anything like that. But like I said, he wants to go out there and play, and that's important. He wants to mix it up, go play. And you need football players. You really need those people that want to go out and play football and are good at it. And he's pretty good at it. I mean, no one's going to be like, oh, wow, they found their star wide receiver of the future. No one's going to think that. But in this game, you need quality depth. And I think that's what he provides, is really quality depth. Might get a start or two.
Bingo. And I was just going to piggyback off of that, Tom, because you're talking about depth. You know what else Josh Reynolds brings? Availability. This man played in 71% of the snaps in 2023. He's available, even for a role guy. When he's thrust into a starting role, he can perform. Now, he did have 2 catches against the Broncos for 41 yards in that nasty Detroit Lions game that you and I had a gut reaction to in prime time in front of the whole country. Yeah. Not that we're still bitter about it or anything. Our guy David coming in. David, appreciate you. $2 super. Good evening, Broncos country. # confused about QB. I hear you, David, right? We're signing new pass catchers. What are the Broncos going to do at quarterback? Well, one ESPN insider is forecasting Sean Payton's plan for the Broncos starting quarterback in 2024. You can read all about it over at milehighhuddle.com, written by yours truly. Let's say what's up to some folks in the chat who have been very patient. Rip, our guy, coming back. Josh Reynolds is a Cortland Sutton / Tim Patrick injury insurance. Yeah. How about we take insurance away, Rip, and we say replacement? Because the fact of the matter is, Cortland Sutton's coming off of a very good year, was one of the most dynamic receivers in the league. He's got a lot of miles on those tires. Tim Patrick, Tom talked about it, 2 consecutive training camp injuries. I was there both days. Maybe I don't go to training camp this year and Tim makes it out. I don't know. But you have to have guys available. Lil Jordan Humphrey, he was available. Marvin Mims, he was available. Cortland Sutton, he was available. Tom, will Cortland Sutton be available for a draft day trade?
I mean, I suppose if teams are starting to get desperate, right? I mean, if teams are saying, we need, no, I'm not saying desperate as in
Cortland sucks.
that Cortland Sutton's bad. No, he's a good player. What I mean is they're getting desperate they need to fill their wide receiver room. They pick up the phone because all of these receivers that they were looking at in the draft start getting taken. Maybe they start picking up the phone and offering something that Sean Payton will take for Sutton. I mean, you don't just trade Sutton for nothing, right? I mean, you got to get something for him. So I think then maybe, but I think Sutton's kind of in their plans from what I see happening in the wide receiver room. I think Courtland Sutton's in their plans for another season, but money talks, right? Or draft picks or whatever they want.
Yeah, that's just it. I mean, every day we find out how much more and more teams, how many more teams love these quarterbacks coming into this draft. Jaden Daniels, LSU guy, had his pro day today. We'll get into that here in a little bit. The Broncos are doing their homework. They were well represented at LSU's pro day today. Just like our guy Gary Leeds Palmer, GLP, always very well represented, a generous $9.99. GE Tom and Luke, what is the guaranteed money? Go Broncos. Now, that was a fantastic question, Tom. I'm going to pull that up real quick. I know it's interesting when Adam Schefter breaks news because, one, it's always accurate. Two, he's very smart in the way he breaks it. When I saw his tweet today, and I follow the good guys, right? The good guys to me, Schefter, Rappaport, Kliss locally, Troy Rank, right? Some of these guys, our guy Cecil, who comes on the show all the time. When Adam Schefter tweeted out that the Broncos signed former Lions wide receiver Josh Reynolds, he said to a 2-year deal worth up to $14 million. So my mind, Gary, immediately goes like yours. Incentives, right? I'm sure that there's a ton of packages in there. If Josh plays great, if he starts all these games, if they get wins, he's going to get bonuses. Tom, what do you make of the 2-year $14 million deal?
Well, my guess is probably a 1-year deal for the team. When it all comes down to it, they probably can get out of it pretty easily, as my guess. After a year, if he doesn't wow the team or whatever. But I mean, $7 million a year for a receiver who is fairly productive, I think that's a pretty decent deal. And again, he might be bringing more than just stats, right? Or more than just depth the wide receiver room, like we talked about. Part of that turnaround has bringing a new attitude, which is this team needs a new attitude. There's no doubt about it. So, I mean, I think it's worth it. It's not too expensive, and they, like I said, it's probably a 1-year deal that they could get out of pretty inexpensively if they needed to.
Yeah, I think you're right. This is per Mike Kliss over at 9 News, an article he's got up right now. The base of Reynolds' contract figures to come in at around $6 million per year. So I think some of those details are still coming back. But Gary, I like where your head's at, right? Because you follow the money, and then what's the guaranteed money? That is really interesting because it kind of tells you a story of what the projection for this type of player in Josh Reynolds is, meaning, where does Sean Payton want to play him? How often does he want to play him? He obviously has some packages involved for a Josh Reynolds right now. He's an interesting receiver, man. I can remember watching Reynolds playing with the Raiders and playing with the Lions this last season, and he doesn't have a lot of bulk to him, but he's a very sneaky kind of receiver. He's a sneaky possession kind of receiver in my mind. I think he's going to surprise a lot of people. I think he will bring some attitude. Courtland, Marvin Mims, I mean, those guys, Lil Jordan Humphrey, I mean, they can only bring so much. At a certain point, you have to have a guy that's just willing to battle. Tim Patrick was that guy. I can still remember Tim Patrick wanting to fight guys on the sideline last year. I mean, Russell Wilson takes a late hit or something. The offensive line goes and sits on the bench. People are restraining Tim Patrick from getting onto the field because he wants to kick some ass. I mean, you need to have these type of guys. It's just, I get it, Broncos country. It's not a cream of the crop signing. Does it indicate the Broncos are going to roll with Jarrett Stidham? Not necessarily. Does it indicate that Courtland Sutton is on his way out of Denver because we're going to trade him to go after JJ McCarthy? Not necessarily, but I think all options are truly on the table. Rip coming back in, man. Triple Crown in it. Love it. Don't buy Sutton getting traded. We had 2 years in a row missing one of our top 2 wide receivers. Yeah. Hashtag insurance. Here's why I buy the fact that Courtland Sutton could get traded. The Broncos are desperate. Rip, to your point. I mean, it sucks when you don't have any of your top wideouts. It sucks even more when you don't have a quarterback.
Yeah. Well, from my perspective, I don't think that they're going to trade him. I think that they need I mean, they need some players. You can't just get rid of everybody and then start new. I mean, he's still got some tread left on his tires. I don't know. The only reason why I think that they could is because he may bring value, right? But then they're going to have to go back to the well for a wide receiver. It can go either way for me. I think it feels like Sutton's still in their plans, though. They're not going to go out and sign a big name. Sutton played pretty well. He might have a good season again. It might be worth keeping him around. But like I said earlier, if the phone starts ringing at draft day and they're going to offer something really good for him, they'll probably take it.
Yeah, that's just it. I mean, I don't think the Broncos are looking to trade him, Rip. So I think you're exactly right. And Thomas is on to that as well. But you're accepting those phone calls. And I think you have to ask a series of questions and figure out if those answers align with your vision for the long-term or short-term future relative to decisions you're going to make in this draft. What does that mean? For me, I asked the question, is Courtland Sutton replaceable? To me, yes, absolutely. He's replaceable. He's a second-round pick out of SMU. He's been a very good player for the Denver Broncos. I wouldn't say great. He's had some accomplishments here, but I also consider Courtland Sutton. Does he want to hang around in Denver? You want to try something different? I mean, sometimes the grass is greener. Sometimes it's not. I think it's easier. You know what? I know it's easier to find a starting wide receiver. It's the quarterback. That's the damnedest thing here, Tom. And I got to be honest, I'm getting really, real nervous, right? With all these teams falling in love more and more every single day. I think the Broncos are going to have to give up an absolute haul, and Rip's not going to like this. Only person getting traded is PS2.
Yeah, that'd be a bummer. I really would. I would rather see Sutton gone before PS2. But, if they do go out and get a rookie quarterback, it would be nice to have a Courtland Sutton there to kind of, instead of a bunch of young or unproven folks.
Have a dog in your room?
Catching balls from a inexperienced rookie quarterback. Unless they are able to get a really good one in the draft also, then maybe not. But it would be nice to have him around for that rookie, at least another season.
I would love to have PS2 here, Rip. I would also love a quarterback, but can't have your cake and eat it too. I don't know what the Broncos are going to do. It's exciting. It's nerve-wracking. It's MHI. It's Wednesday night. He is Thomas Hall. I am Luke Patterson. We appreciate everybody for joining us here. We are reacting to the news out of Broncos country today. Denver signed former Lions wide receiver Josh Reynolds to a 2-year deal worth up to $14 million. Approximations are putting it at $6 million per year. Nice complimentary piece. We're debating, does this mean Courtland Sutton's on the move? Not necessarily. Could it happen? Maybe. But quarterback is on everybody's mind right now. I've got an article up right now. Adam Schefter went on Pat McAfee's show, gave some of his thoughts about what Sean Payton's going to do. You can read about that over at milehighhuddle.com. Jaden Daniels had his LSU Pro Day today, Tom, and Broncos scouts and personnel were in attendance, and Broncos defensive line coach Jamar Cain was there. Apparently, this Broncos defensive line coach was LSU's defensive line coach. He absolutely loves himself some Jaden Daniels. The league is buzzing all over Jaden Daniels today. That's my guy. He's been my guy since before this whole draft season has even started. He's my number one. JJ McCarthy's my number two. Jaden Daniels, do the Broncos have a shot in hell? I mean, they're at 12, Tom. We thought initially trade up to the top 10. It feels like today, Wednesday, March 27th, if the Broncos don't get to 5, they could be the odd man sitting out.
You're absolutely right. From the way it seems, and of course, it's lying season. People are saying they're trying to manipulate however they can. But it does feel like you got to get up into the top 5 to grab one of those quarterbacks. And it might not even be, you might miss out on the one that you really wanted too. I mean, if you want Jaden Daniels, you probably got to go up a little bit higher than that to get someone like that. But here's the thing. Sean Payton, I went and looked at all of his drafts that he's been involved with.
Stop it.
Out of the 16 drafts, he's traded up 21 times. Only traded back 6, and 5 of those. So 1 out of every about 3 drafts, he trades up in the first round. So 5 times he traded up in the first round. My guess is he's going to go try and trade up in the first round. Problem is, doesn't have a lot of ammunition in order to make the deal. So something else is going to have to give probably. But my guess is he's going to try and trade up. He's going to try and move up to get in a position to take one of those quarterbacks.
But you've got to do it. I mean, I wrote an article a few days ago over at MHH.com. There's some rumors out there. The Raiders are going to leapfrog the Broncos right now. I mean, the Raiders have been dominating Denver to the effect of never beating Las Vegas ever since its existence. And the last time the Broncos beat the Raiders, they were the Oakland Raiders here in Denver. I was at that game, and it would be just an absolute kick in the groin, Tom, to have the Raiders continue their streak of dominance with a franchise quarterback. I mean, you're exactly right. You got to look at the history when it comes to Sean Payton being aggressive. You've got to look at the history of Sean Payton's draft picks. I know that one of his Saints guys, right, just came over to the Denver Broncos. Lots of his Saints guys, one of his Saints guys. And there are even some quotes out there right now from Dennis Allen, right? Sean Payton's trying to turn Denver into New Orleans. Let's do it. They had a Super Bowl. I definitely want a part of that. Riptide, man, appreciate you. The Broncos have to trade up. There's no other option. So everyone prepare for PS2, where Arizona red. We have to get a quarterback. Rip, you read my mind, man, because, Tom, I was just thinking, Cortland Sutton, he'd look good in red. You could sell the Kyler Murray thing, right? You need a dominant, big play wide receiver. You know that the Arizona Cardinals love themselves cornerbacks. They always have. They always draft one whenever they get the opportunity. They overdraft them even at times. I'm with Rip here. I love Pat Surtain. He was one of my top graded prospects for the Denver Broncos. Number 2 coming out of his draft class, only to Micah Parsons at number 1. I wanted Micah, then I wanted PS2. PS2 got drafted on these airwaves. Everyone was pissed. But me, I was thrilled. I loved it, Tom. You can't get enough lockdown corners. However, I have resigned to the fact that Pat Surtain will not be a Denver Bronco in 2024.
Well, I mean, as a last resort, yes, you got to do it. I hope they find other options. I mean, yes, you need a quarterback, but you also need a cornerback. You also need an edge rusher. I mean, you need these impact players, these elite players at different positions. If you want to be successful in the NFL, you can't just have just a quarterback. So if Patrick Surtain was 28 or 29, sure. But he's at the right age where he could grow with this team still. And yeah, you're going to have to pay him big money. But you know what? Yeah. You just ate a bunch of money from a mistake. Don't make another one, right? So I don't know. I would hate to see him leave. It would be tough, especially if you do it to go get a quarterback, and then that quarterback isn't the franchise guy. Then you're back to square one without your star corner. So it's a tough decision.
Well, not only that, but you're not even at square one. You're in the negative still,
right?
Because of you've mentioned almost every show since we've started this pod together. I mean, the Broncos aren't just playing with house money. They've given up a haul to get Russ. They've given up a haul to get Sean Payton. They've given up a haul to cut Russ. I mean, at a certain point, you can't just keep taking money out of savings because then you're not going to have anything left. Then you're living on credit cards, and interest rates are real. Those interest rates come in the form of missing the playoffs, having a fan base completely check out. This is where we've lived, folks. I mean, you guys know it, and I hate to have to remind you, but this is where the Broncos were. It reminds me of that quote from Emmanuel Sanders years ago. Remember when he said, "Living in a world of suck."
Yep.
The Broncos have been living in a world of suck for some time, but you know who always makes me feel better, no matter the circumstances? Our guy, Michael Rinquillo, coming in here. Good evening, Thomas and Luke on the Mile High Insiders. Go Broncos. Michael, let us know, man. You're out there in Arizona. How would people react? Would they be interested in a Pat Surtain, a Cortland Sutton, two number ones? Need you to hook us up, buddy. I need you down there at Cardinals HQ, making sure the Broncos can lock up a QB. David Yonkin coming back in with a generous $4.99 super. Can the Broncos move? Yes. Will they, with the way that the Broncos' luck is? No, they won't move up. Oh, David, I see what you're doing there. You're ornery. David's always ornery, man, but he's onto something, Tom. I mean, you're saying we can't be a slave to history with Sean Payton moving up. Then you're telling me he pretty much moves up every single time. And then you've got a George Payton, right, who moves back almost every single time. Man, it's Sean Payton's show, baby. We're moving up, David. We're moving up.
Yeah. Well, the only reason they wouldn't try to move up is if, say, the two quarterbacks that they really coveted were gone that they thought they had a chance at, right? And they went way early, like 1, 2, 3, boom. And they're okay. So say it was JJ McCarthy and they wanted Jane Daniels, and it was 1, 2, 3, they were all gone, and there was no way to move up, and they aren't happy with maybe the other quarterbacks.
No Bo Nix, no on a Bo Nix, maybe no on a Michael Penix, or maybe they want to see how far they slide.
Yeah, exactly. So if they have a shot at jumping up, say they like JJ and they like, I don't know, maybe Drake May or whatever, and one of them slips a little and they get up to 5 or 6 and they can grab them. Yeah, but I don't know. It's going to be a tough one. There's a lot of interesting quarterbacks. This is the wrong season to need a quarterback and not be in one of the top 2 or 3 positions.
Look at our good friend Kathy coming in here all the way from Germany. Really, really appreciate you. Hopefully you're doing well. I know we haven't chatted in a little while, but Tom and I are always thinking about you. Kathy's reacting to the news of the day, Broncos signing Josh Reynolds, saying, look, he's not just a good blocker or just another guy. Reynolds can play, and he plays hard, something that the Broncos have missed with other guys the last couple of seasons. Really, really appreciate that, Kathy, and not to be outdone from our friends across the pond, but I see William James Baker in here. He'd be an ornery as ever from the United Kingdom as well. Really, really appreciate all of Broncos country around the world, man. It's so cool to know that you guys are rocking with us in the wee early hours, the late hours, whenever. People want Broncos football. People want winning football, Tom. When the hell is this thing going to get on track? Because let's say the draft comes and goes. The Broncos don't get a quarterback in the first round. Jarrett Stidham, he's the option. I have a piece about it up at milehighhuddle.com. Some quotes from Adam Schefter today. How do you sell that to a fan base? You're Greg Penner. He just got done talking. Greg Penner just got done talking at the owners' meetings, right? So did George Payton. I wrote all about it. Both guys over at MHH.com. They're talking expectations. George Payton's up there saying, I'm accountable for the Russ thing, but we've got Sean. He's going to get us in the right direction. If Sean Payton doesn't take a quarterback in the first round, Tom, how do you sell this product that is the 2024 Broncos to fans?
It's going to be tough. I mean, you saw Broncos fans leaving the stadium early. I mean, when they're losing, there's not a lot. I mean, there was a lot of enthusiasm at first, but then when they start losing, it's like, okay, it's hard to sell. It's hard to sell losing. And then if it's a boring draft, say they trade back and they end up with like an offensive tackle, which I don't get me wrong. I'm not, it's boring, but it's right. I mean, the offensive tackle is good. And there's this, what do you sell? They raise ticket prices. What are they got a uniform that's coming out that, it's like, who are you going to put in that uniform to get people to get jazzed up about it? It's going to be tough. I mean,
well, and how many more dopes are going to keep buying quarterback jerseys? I bought the Russell Wilson jersey for my wife when he got here. I thought it was going to work. I'm going back, and I'm the first one to back that bus up over Russell Wilson. I was the first one to say that I was pumped that he was here too. I mean, you're exactly right, Tom. How do you literally sell jerseys to a fan base that feels like they've become the Cleveland Browns guy? Where, it used to be 15 years ago, Cleveland Browns guy was infamous for all the names on the jersey. Sean Payton talked about that a few weeks ago, saying, I don't want that to be the case here in Denver. He addressed it at the combine. And Rip's exactly right, man. Support the trade up, Broncos country. QB or bust. Absolutely love it. Phil coming in. Scott, I'm feeling that with this new tackle rule, a few things might happen. First, more flags are thrown. Second, more rushing yards per team. Third, more beef on the line to stop running backs before they get into the secondary, where I think most of these tackles take place. Also, is it a reviewable penalty? Hashtag Buckham and go Broncos. Phil, really appreciate that, man. The hip drop tackle. Apparently, that is a new no-no in the NFL coming out of league owner meetings. It has created quite the stir all over social media. Tom, what was your reaction to the league saying you can no longer play tackle football in the NFL?
Well, to me, it's I didn't like it because I like the physicality of the sport. I always have. But the other thing that I don't like is they talk about player safety, yet it's only player safety when it's something that they can easily implement. It's not oh, we're going to go make everybody take their turf out and put in real, grass that's not going to hurt them. So it's a very hypocritical approach. Like, oh, we're all about player safety, because the players union didn't want this to happen, but they did it anyway. So it's like, okay, it's a little bit of a hypocritical take of it. And then the final piece that I don't like,
no pun intended, right?
Yeah.
The hip drop tackle is banned, and it's hypocritical, right?
Right. But finally is the refs have done a pretty poor job interpreting rules, I think, from my perspective. And this is another one that they're going to have to try and figure out if that was a hip drop, or they're going to throw the flag if it's even close or whatever. I don't know. It just, they're making the refs too involved without any repercussions for messing up the game and costing teams victories. And this is just one more thing that they're adding with no repercussions for mistakes made by the refs.
I completely agree. And look, we've got coaches that watch our show. I coach volleyball. I'm sure we have some youth football coaches. I open it up to the chat. How do you teach a youth football player how to tackle? I don't. That's a legitimate question. When I was growing up, when I was coming up playing for Dave Logan, I mean, you wrap up and you tackle. Yeah. We never aimed for the head. Things happen. It's why you wear a helmet. But you're exactly right, Tom. The league tries to pride itself on safety, and all they're trying to do right now is get ahead of future lawsuits. Yeah. That's all they're trying to do. They want to. Same with the special teams rule, right? We want more exciting plays. Also, we don't want to play any more lawsuits for concussions. Right. It's an absolute, it's a shell game. I hate it. I think it's really interesting when you see like guys like Mark Schlereth, right, saying, look what they're doing to our sport. And I love that. That gets me fired up, right? Because you have all these advocates, and it's really easy for the NFL to say, here's how we want you guys to do it. We never had to do it. We don't know how to implement it, but you're going to have to figure out how to do it. The special teams rule. I mean, Phil, I love the take, man, on the hip drop tackle. That's a mess. How do you coach special teams now with this new kickoff return rule? The first guy or gal that figures that out, Tom, they will get a head coaching job in the league. This is going to be a monumental task. I think it's going to dilute the game in a major way.
Yeah, and the problem too is it's not just, I mean, they're doing it purposely. Like the horse collar tackle, that almost felt like it was purposely done. Like they knew you could get injured.
Intentional. It was intentional. You're not just dropping your weight what do you do when you've got a 260 pounder running with a ball and you're undersized corner and all you've got, the guy we just signed today, he's 6'3", 194 pounds, Josh Reynolds. If he's on the kickoff team, how in the hell does he tackle someone, Tom?
Yeah, that's the thing. You get a big running back that runs through you and swings you around, and now you got to let go so you don't get a flag. You just can't. You don't. In fact, the whole thing about landing on a quarterback, you can't. I remember a guy getting injured because he was trying not to land on the quarterback and then injured himself doing it. Yep. And so it's one of those things that I understand you want safety, but this type of injury that is happening isn't a head injury that later in life you can't think anymore, right? Like, how bad it got with the concussions. This is, it's a serious injury. You'll have injury, you'll have it the rest of your life. When you're older, it'll probably act up or anything, but it's not affecting you mentally. This is a collision sport. That's what's always been. There's only so much you can do for player safety. And then to be hypocritical about it when you're not really caring about player safety, it kind of rubs me the wrong way.
Well, and have a plan for it. Institute it at the Pop Warner level, the youth level, the high school level. So by the time these guys are in college in the NFL, which by the way are two entirely different sports, as everyone well knows, the balls aren't even different, folks. The fields aren't even different. The goalposts are literally moving when it comes to the NFL. These damn owner meetings every single year with these ridiculous rules. I'm sick of it. Stephen Hyde coming in, man. Really appreciate you, Hyde. Appreciate the support over on Facebook, guys. Facebook stars and super chats, they definitely help us keep the lights on here at MHI. Tom and I really, really appreciate it. Phil coming back in. Good evening, Luke and Thomas. Thank you, Phil. That was a great question. You got me all fired up, Phil, with the hip drop tackle. And I'm just, feeling good about Josh Reynolds being here. Now we're talking special teams, all that sort of stuff. Stephen Eichenbaum, thank you for joining the show, and thank you for your support, Stephen. Coming in with a good question, Tom. How many teams are drafting a quarterback? And I know that Stephen is referencing the first round. I'm just going to say the top 3 picks are most likely locked in, and they're most likely quarterbacks. So Chicago, Washington, New England, those are your first 3. Then you've got 2 non-quarterback teams, we think, right? In the Cardinals at 4, the Chargers at 5. What are the Giants going to do? At 6, yeah. Tennessee, they're in the market for a quarterback and a new start. Chicago sitting there at 9 again. I mean, Tom, I think there's going to be a heavy run on quarterbacks, and the Broncos had better get themselves to 5 or they're out.
Well, you got Vikings and the Raiders who are in the quarterback market that are willing to trade up as well. I mean, you could have 6 or 7 teams that are really vying for one of those top 4 quarterbacks, maybe 5. So there's not. It's too much bread for the amount of butter that you have.
I like that. I'm going to steal that. I really like that, Tom. William James Baker, our guy coming in from UK. My guys, London Broncos calling. Guys, I've got to be honest. I don't want the Broncos to trade up. If our guy is there at 12, you take him. If not, you trade back. Let's get 2 more picks, a second and a third, and let's get better for next year's draft and free agency. I love my Broncos country. William, man, I hear you. William's like the voice of reason, Tom. He's a guy very close to you, right? In your own likeness. You guys use logic when I rather just go on feeling and raw emotion. You got to do it, Will. You're exactly right, man. They have to consider all options, including moving back in a worst-case scenario. Your quarterback's not there. Here's the only way I could go there with you, William. The only way, and it's not even a guarantee that it could happen in 2025. I've heard all the stuff about Dak Prescott. Maybe Dak Prescott to the Denver Broncos, everybody. He's not going to have a new contract. Haven't we done this with these quarterbacks already? All right. Dak Prescott, for whatever he's done in the regular season, he hasn't done squat in 8 years. I mean, 2 playoff wins in the wild card rounds. He's never sniffed the divisional round, never sniffed the conference. I don't want Dak Prescott. I would rather just start over. Will, here's where you get me excited, and I don't know if the Broncos could do it. Shedeur Sanders, Tom, that's where my mind would go in 2025 or immediately after, right? The first round of the draft, the Broncos don't get a guy. I'm thinking it's got to be Shedeur. Tank for Shedeur. I don't want to wait a whole nother year and have to do this again, Tom. I just talk some sense into me. Is Will thinking logically, or should I be irrationally convincing him otherwise?
Well, you my perspective when it comes to actually crunching the numbers and looking at the draft, the more picks you have, the more chance that you have of getting players that work out in the NFL, because time and time again, it's not a 50-50 proposition after the first round. So getting more picks is better. The only problem is if you move out of the first round or you keep moving too far back, then you lose out on impact players. That's where most of the really impactful elite players come from. Mostly they come from other rounds. Don't get me wrong, but right. Typically it's from the first round. So if you keep moving back, and the Broncos need some good players. That's what they've been missing. They've been missing elite players. So I go back and forth on it. But at the same time, if you really like the draft, you like the quarterback in the draft, you go get them because they need one. They need a quarterback. So I go both ways on that comment because more draft picks the better. But at the same time, there are some significant needs on this team that they need to grab somebody to fill that. So say they miss out on their quarterback, they could get an edge rusher. They could get an impactful interior defensive lineman who could get after the quarterback, or maybe even an offensive tackle, left tackle that you can replace Garrett Bowles with and have that next quarterback come in and grow with. So there are options, but they have to get some elite players. They're void of elite players.
You're exactly right, man. It's like that guy or that gal that everybody knows who says they can't afford their bills, but they're eating lobster every night, right? At a certain point, you've got more problems than you do fixes, and you need to prioritize those problems. How are you going to fix them? George Payton, Sean Payton, Greg Penner, the Broncos contingent, whatever you want to call them, they say they have a plan. They say that they're united, and they say that they're moving forward. I'd be real disappointed if they don't end up with a first-round QB. James Moss coming back in, a $10 super. Thank you, James. The optimist in me won't sleep on the Broncos being that bad. We've got some young, hungry players who've got something to prove. And James, I love it, man. Right? Like, gotta have some optimism, gotta have some pessimistic views at times as well. Here's the thing. James is right. There are some young, hungry players. And when I think about the news of the day with the wide receiver room and Josh Reynolds being added to this room, I think of some young guys that not a lot of people are talking about. I think Marvin Mims, what's his growth going to be in sophomore year? Are we looking at a sophomore slump? Or is Sean Payton going to really craft and mold this player in a way that he really hasn't with other wide receivers? Marvin Mims doesn't fit the traditional Sean Payton mold, yet Sean Payton handpicked him last year, Tom. There's something there with that. I also, I love Lil Jordan Humphrey. I do. I fell in love with the guy last summer. He was more productive than Jerry Jeudy. I think he was a consistent, big-bodied wide receiver, maybe a poor man's Cortland Sutton, if you will. Doesn't have all the ability, has similar size, but he definitely has drive and he definitely has heart. Two of the players James is referencing who have something to prove.
Well, I'll tell you this. If the Broncos aren't bad next year, then Sean Payton has done a heck of a coaching job. He really has. And if they're really good, because when I look at this roster, there's a lot of holes on it. Too many holes. And yes, there's young, hungry players, but talent does win out in the end. But don't get me wrong. You have to have young, hungry players. What you want is young, hungry, elite level players, and then you got something. There's just too many holes. There's just too much depletion of the roster, from a roster that wasn't that good to begin with, that we knew wasn't that good. So I just feel like next year is going to be one of those down years where it's kind of a struggle, but that can turn around quickly if they hit a couple players on the draft, a couple elite impactful players in the right spots, and Sean Payton does a heck of a coaching job. Then you can.
Do you remember what our season predictions were last year, Tom?
Yes. 10-7 was mine. I said 10-7.
I think I was did I have 12? I feel like I might have had a couple more than that.
I didn't realize you were being that optimistic.
I thought, well, we saved it, right? And somebody look
somewhere.
Somebody look it up. What's the point, Luke? Sean almost got to 500. Right? Yeah. Almost was in the playoff contention conversation for a little while there. I mean, and he did that with Russell Wilson, right? And I know all of a sudden, because Russell Wilson's wearing yellow and Mike Tomlin wraps his arm around him, everybody thinks he's the best thing ever. Just wait, Pittsburgh. All right? Just wait. I know you got Cordell Patterson. That's great. Just wait until the Team 3 poison infiltrates that building. I'm telling you. It has nothing to do with whether or not Russ can play. Has everything to do with the distraction and the circus and all the other stuff. What do you think of Sean too? I don't know if you saw his comment too, talking about sacks, right? At the owners' meeting. It's just they had alluded to, how do you get better? Well, we can't take sacks. Kind of rolling that bus over Russ, rolling right, always taking those sacks. I mean, it's going to be interesting. We're going to find out real quick. Mike Edel coming in with a $5 super. Hey, Thomas and Luke, I'm sorry I'm running late. I just got done moving effing snow. I'll have to rewatch. You guys are great. Go Broncos. No, Mike, you are great. He's Mike E, and he gets respect. The Denver Broncos is what he expects. Here's the thing, dude. Moving snow, I was right there with you, Mike. We got dumped on here in Colorado last week, and Tom, while we were moving snow, he's literally moving. So we feel you, Mike. But that's the beauty of these podcasts, guys. Never apologize if you can't get in. Get these pods whenever it's convenient for you, whether that be on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Twitch, over on X. We've got these podcasts and more. Go back and listen to some Legends episodes. Justin Simmons being interviewed by Thomas Hall, Carl Mecklenburg, and many other Broncos greats. We encourage you to go listen. Thank you, Mike. Tom coming back in. Some Tom on Tom crime. I absolutely love it. If the Denver Broncos do trade up, I think next year's first round pick has a lot of value than the other teams trying to trade up. This team has major holes. And Tom, I like that. That's forecasting, if you're that potential trade partner for the Broncos, you're looking at their roster. You're looking at them paying $47 million of Russ's salary. You're looking at the dead cap. You're looking at the holes. I mean, there aren't a lot of secrets when it comes to the Denver Broncos roster right now. The only secret, we don't know who they like at quarterback. Tom's onto something.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. The team has major holes, but you can't fix it all in.
May have an internet issue. We will see if Tom can hop back in there. But now I hear what you're saying, Tom. You can't always try to figure out things in one go. But the Broncos have missed on a lot of meat and potatoes picks. Rounds 2 through 6, 2 through 7. I mean, what are the Broncos going to do with a Javonte Williams? What are they going to do with a Quinn Miners? These are all things that we have to ask ourselves as we move forward to the draft, because there could be major needs the Broncos haven't even addressed yet. And depth has been the theme of the show, right? We're talking about Josh Reynolds getting signed to the Broncos. What does that mean? Well, our very own Thomas Hall came back in and said depth is the first thing it means. It gives you availability. It gives you a little maneuverability if you want to move up in the draft. But Tom, I think you're exactly right. If you're looking at a trade partner like Arizona, why should I trade with the Broncos instead of the Vikings? Well, the Broncos might have a worse record than the Vikings, so that would immediately give you an advantage there. Really, really appreciate the support, Tom, and appreciate you guys. It's been a really live show, 46 minutes in. It's MHI, 6 p.m. You guys can catch Tom and I every Wednesday night, 6 p.m. Mountain, and we go for about an hour. We're talking about Broncos future quarterbacks, talking about Josh Reynolds, news of the day. And we're just going to open it up. Let's open it up to the comment section here. I would love to hear who Broncos country loves and why. I really don't think that the Denver Broncos are going to sign a free agent quarterback. When folks started to find out that a free agent was being signed, we would all immediately rush to the quarterback position. Turns out it's a journeyman wide receiver today, right? A little underwhelming, I know. But if the Broncos weren't going to get Ryan Tannehill now, I'm not sure when they'd get him. I think that Sean Payton values Jarrett Stidham in a major way, whether we do as fans and media or not. I've actually got a story up on milehighhuddle.com right now where Adam Schefter had some very revealing comments regarding Sean Payton's potential plan at quarterback for the Denver Broncos in 2024. As we move on, LSU Pro Day, Jaden Daniels, he threw and worked out for teams today. The Broncos contingent was there. It sounds like Broncos defensive line coach Jamar Cain was there, and Jamar Cain used to coach LSU's team, so we know who that coach, the Broncos defensive line coach, is rooting for in Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels, one of my favorite prospects. I do like JJ McCarthy as well, but guys, it just seems like the more and more time that goes on, the more and more we march closer to April, other teams are falling in love with quarterbacks in a way. You see the Vikings starting to position themselves up for another trade up. These are all things that the Broncos need to be considering and worried about. I asked Tom the question last week: do you try to do a draft day deal now, or draft day deal the day of, or do you try to do a deal now? Do you try to show your hand? There are pros, there are cons, but guys, if the Broncos don't get to number 5 and you're starting to look at some of these quarterbacks, it gets nasty, right? You've got the Caleb Williams probably going number 1, a Drake May. What's the wide receiver run going to look like? That's going to be the big one. I'm talking LSU Pro Day today. Obviously, everybody's talking about Malik Neighbors. I always screw that name up. When wide receivers get picked, that's going to determine a lot of things, Tom. I mean, You got Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors. The Chargers need one of those guys. And then you got Harbaugh going out, falling all over offensive linemen today. It's one of these things, man, where the Broncos have to be diligent about what they're hearing, but they also have to be ready to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
You can't just wait around on the draft board.
It's true. Man, sorry. I don't know what happened. My computer just died and I logged back in, but
you're good.
Yeah, thanks for holding down the fort. Yeah, I mean, depending on how the board falls, I mean, maybe there are some folks that are really enamored with these receivers or enamored with somebody else, and they push a quarterback or 2 down. I don't know. I mean, the nice thing is either way it falls, if the Broncos don't take a quarterback and they stay at 12, then will probably be a pretty darn good player that falls to him.
Well, I see you, Zach. Zach trying to poke fun. They didn't send the D-line coach to watch Jaden Daniels. He went to watch the D-line prospects. Yeah, well, there are actually 3 or 4 prospects, not just the 2. So right back at you, Zach. But no, you're right. I mean, the Broncos didn't send him down there, right? I'm being facetious, but I'm also teasing a little bit. I mean, Jaden Daniels is this guy's guy. He likes him. They're friends, all those sorts of things. And that's what life is too, right? I mean, who do you like? You can like guys' games. You can like policy. That's politics too, right? Not to turn this into politics, but do you like the policy or do you not like the person? All sorts of things that are still relevant to the conversation too. Do you like their game? Do you like the person? Do you I mean, all these sorts of questions. Colin coming in. I heard the Giants might be considering Rattler at 6. Well, that wouldn't be the first major reach for a quarterback out there in New Jersey. That's for sure. Vulcan coming in.
I don't know about that.
I like this, man. I've been waiting for some spicy takes from Vulcan. However, will Josh Reynolds match Jerry Jeudy's 800 yards and
2 touchdowns?
I've been trying not to. That's low hanging fruit, and I've been on it all year, right? But Josh Reynolds, immediate upgrade over Jerry Jeudy. True or false?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, Judy's got talent and he can go out there and play, but I mean, just a different attitude. It brings a lot different. I don't, like I said earlier, I don't think Reynolds is going to wow anybody or anything like that, but he's going to go out there and play hard. So will he get more yards and touchdowns than Jerry Jeudy last year for this year? He might. I don't know if it's a lot more, but he probably will have more touchdowns than Jeudy had last year. I mean, you can't get much lower for a starting wide receiver than 2.
Yeah, man. It's like you're either going to be here and you're going to get going or you're going to get gone. And that's just exactly where the Broncos are at. Tom coming back in. Really appreciate it, Tom. I'd be willing to include Pat Surtain if it gets the Broncos into the top 3. He might be the best cornerback in the NFL, but how many playoff games has that gotten us into? And Tom, I'm right there with you, man. Like, how many times has it won you a game against the Chiefs, right? Like, I hear you. Great corners are hard to find. It's why I was through the moon when we got him. I knew I didn't like Justin Fields. I was out on Justin Fields the second I found out he went to Ohio State. Whether or not CJ Stroud is going to change that mold, I really liked CJ Stroud. Who didn't last year, right, Tom? I mean, my God, he did things that I haven't ever seen a rookie quarterback do. But here's the thing. You've got to be willing to move up, man. Tom, you said earlier that, some of these cornerbacks, they're tough to find. The quarterback's even harder to find. The quarterback ultimately wins you the game. Cornerback, maybe you can get away with some decent cornerbacks if you have a star edge rusher, right? Wait a second. The Broncos don't have a star edge rusher, Tom.
Well, I mean, you think back and you look at Champ Bailey's career with the Broncos, one of the best cornerbacks that ever played the game, and he never ultimately won a Super Bowl. It wasn't until they went out and got Peyton Manning and changed that defense up. You couldn't do it on his own, and you had Jake Plummer as this quarterback, which, I'm sorry, Jake Plummer was, people like him, but he wasn't a great quarterback. He was better under Shanahan. So you have something there. I just don't like the team getting rid of all of their talent for one player, then have to build it back up. I'd like to see some of those core players continue to stay with the team and become that core nucleus of the team going forward. That's where I'm at.
And to your point, that nucleus is rapidly shrinking, right? I mean, Justin Simmons gone, Kareem Jackson gone. Some of the fan friendlies that we've grown accustomed to have been long gone by now. Von Miller, Bradley Chubb, Chris Harris Jr. I mean, who is the nucleus of this team? I can think of 2 people, and it's because they're your most valuable capital assets right now. Garrett Bowles and Cortland Sutton. And that can't be a left tackle. An aging left tackle and an aging wide receiver can't be the nucleus of your team, to your point. Mikey coming back in. I don't think Jarrett Stidham is as bad as everyone thinks. He was in a tough spot last year with Russ getting bunched. Then the Broncos were out of the playoffs. Mike, that's interesting, man. I think I'm trying to have a little bit of an open mind when it comes to Jarrett Stidham, Tom. I'm trying to brace myself. right? Because when Adam Schefter's going out there and he's saying, I think I know what Sean Payton's plan is, you can read about that over at milehighhuddle.com. It sort of excites me, but it also sort of makes me nervous. Look, Stidham, 2019, 4th-round pick by the Pats, spent some time with the Raiders, came in, threw for 496 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. Went 1-1 in the final 2 games. I think he did okay, right? But by then, we were over it. By then, we weren't really paying attention to Jarrett Stidham. I wasn't giving him a fair evaluation. I wanted to know about a first-round quarterback. Tom, should we all take a breath and try to give Jarrett Stidham an actual chance, more than just 2 games?
Well, you might be forced to try and give him a chance because so far there hasn't been any movement in the quarterback front. Look, we watched Jarrett Stidham in camp. He didn't look very good. And when we talked about it and said if he has to step in, the team's not going to go anywhere. And I still have that same feeling. And maybe he will get better next year. I just don't see it. I don't know. We watched him in camp. Wasn't impressed. And
I wasn't either.
He'll be a serviceable enough player, but he's not going to win you any games.
Remember when everybody was falling all over themselves in the preseason? Was it against the Arizona Cardinals? Maybe Michael Ronquillo could answer that one for me. And they're like, Jarrett Stidham is lighting up the 4 touchdowns, 300 yards. He's playing 4th stringers against 4th stringers and 5th stringers, guys that won't be in the league, right? You pump your brakes just a little bit. You're exactly right, Tom. I remember being so upset with what I saw with Jarrett Stidham last year that I was writing articles that went viral for MHH.com about Ben DiNucci. Yes, Ben DiNucci. I was saying that Ben DiNucci deserved to be the backup quarterback, and I'm not a Ben DiNucci fan. We try to call it like we see it when we're out there. But I will say this. I think that Sean Payton got ahead of the quarterback market in getting Jarrett Stidham in terms of the contract, right? When you get a 2-year, $10 million deal, that market is only going up. So suddenly that rich contract that we thought was so bad last year, it doesn't turn out to be as painful. You know, it would also make it better, a 1st-round rookie quarterback to take some of the pressure off of Broncos country and having to ride with Jarrett Stidham. Guys, we're going to wrap up this hour real quick. It's been a real live and fun show. We appreciate everybody coming in. We've been rocking and rolling for the past 2 months, and it really means a lot to Tom and I. We put a lot of energy and a lot of heart and feeling into what we do, but it means even more that we get to show up and have fun for a whole hour. Tom, is this cathartic for me? I need it. I have a blast every Wednesday night, man. I know you're moving tomorrow. I know it's a big day, but I can't wait for the season ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be an interesting off season and an interesting season coming up. That's for sure. And like I said earlier, if the Broncos improve and have a decent season next year, Sean's really coached that team well. Or they got really lucky in the draft, like I said. But it'll be interesting to see how he pulls that team together and gets them to perform on the field when they're lacking talent.
They're lacking talent, but hey, better lucky than good. Sign me up all day, every day. Guys, if you'd like to reach out to Tom, please do so on social media at Thomas Hall NFL. Yours truly at Luke Patterson LP. Head on over to milehighhuddle.com. I've got an article up right now regarding Adam Schefter's thoughts to Sean Payton's quarterback plan. I also have a couple articles up coming out of the owners' meetings, right? What's the expectation from the Broncos owners? They've sunk, billions of dollars into this team, a new stadium potentially on the horizon, new turf. When are they going to get an ROI? George Payton finally accepted accountability for Russell Wilson. You can read about all that stuff over at milehighhuddle.com. We are going to see you guys next Wednesday at 6 p.m. Mountain. Broncos country, we're drafting a 1st-round QB with Josh Reynolds. This is the way.
This is the way.